Hello, family and friends. It's Kim here from Kim's Country Corner. And today I'm out at the Hancock Homestead and I'm in the kitchen and I'm going to be cooking a meal along with a dessert. And I thought I would bring you guys along for the process. I'm trying to stay in the house today because John just had his foot surgery yesterday and he is home and he's recovering nicely. But I like to be here just in case he needs something because with it being his foot, it's harder for him to get around. So I just want to be here to help him out. I'm also fixing the meal because my sister is getting ready to leave tomorrow to go on another adventure. So I thought today would be a good day to cook a meal for everyone. So whenever I asked John and Jody what they wanted, and we all agreed on the German casserole. Now, I don't know if the German casserole is the official name, but that's the name that my mother gave it. And this was a casserole that she used to fix probably at least once a month when I was a kid during the fall and winter months. Because it's kind of a heavier meal, we would always save it for fall and winter. But anyway, we are into September now. And so we are all ready for a little bit of a heavier meal. And this is what we decided on, the German casserole. All right, so basically the German casserole is just four ingredients. You have your pork chops, you have potatoes, you have cabbage, and then over those three main ingredients, you also have a white sauce. So yeah, very, very simple recipe. Okay, so yes, very simple recipe. So my potatoes are already peeled and ready to go. I want to get the cabbages cut up, and I always like to kind of piecemeal this. Back in World War II, they used to have what they called piecemeals, and that is where you made sure, because food was so scarce, that you would piece out the helpings. So like, you always make sure everyone had like one potato and one piece of cabbage and one piece of meat. And that's called a piecemeal. And then everyone would be getting the same thing and food would go further. So I'm doing what's called a piecemeal. So I have 2 heads of cabbage here and I'm going to cut them into 4 pieces, which will give me 8 servings of cabbage. So then I'm going to make sure I have 8 servings of potatoes and then 8 servings of the pork chops. So, and I've done this so many times that I know what I need, and it always works out well. It's like, am I cutting that the right way? But I am. Just very thick cabbage. There we go. All right. So I always cut it in half and then I cut it into 4s. So the next thing I do, just like lettuce, I like to take off that first leaf, kind of clean it up a little bit. Probably wouldn't have to do that, but that's the way my mother used to do it. So that's the way I do it. I don't know, just, I guess, more sanitary to take off that outer leaf. And then I'm going to take these over and rinse them off. Okay, so now that I have the cabbage and the potatoes ready to go, it's time to brown the pork chops. And so I'll bring you over and show you how I do that. And then we'll be ready to put the casserole together. All right, so just in the very bottom of the pan, I'm going to put just a tiny bit of oil. Okay. There. Okay. All right, and then to the vegetable oil, I'm going to add some diced onion. Now, if you do not like onion, you do not have to put onion in this, but we all like onion. We think it adds a nice flavor to it. So I am going to add a little bit of onion to the casserole. Okay, so I'm going to basically saute these onions in vegetable oil. All right. All right, and then I'm adding a half a teaspoon of salt. Okay. And a fourth a teaspoon of pepper. Dump some of that out. All right. Get all that going here. All right, and then I'm going to add my pork chops so I can just brown them. I am not cooking the pork chops all the way through. I'm just browning them. Because these are taking a while. And I really want to get this casserole into the oven, so I'm just going to go ahead and do a second pan. All right, that's about what we're looking for. It's just a nice browning on both sides. Okay, so while I'm browning the pork chops here, I'm going to go ahead and preheat my stove. And I just need to preheat it to 350. So we're going to get that started preheating. All right, these are looking good. I'll make sure I've got them completely brown on both sides. All right, now these are browned. So what I'm going to do is take them out and put them on a plate, like so. All right, so it is at this point in time that you can do one of two things. You can go ahead and make your own white sauce, which is basically butter and flour, salt and pepper, and then milk, okay? Or you can use cream of celery soup, okay? And that's what we're gonna do, is use the cream of celery soup today. Now, since we're going to be using this though as a sauce instead of a soup, what you're going to do is you're going to put this in and then you're going to add milk, okay? All right, and then to this, I'm going to add a cup of milk, okay? Now this will thicken up. If it doesn't, you can add a little bit more flour to it. But usually all you need is a can of soup and a cup of milk. And that will give you a nice sauce to pour over the casserole ingredients. All right. Let's check the other pork chops. I think they should be about ready to come out. Yep, that one looks good. Good. Now I'm kind of doubling this. Okay, I'm doing a double batch of German casserole. So if you want to just do four pork chops, then you just, cut everything in half. You only use 1 can of soup instead of 2 cans of soup, which you're about ready to see me do. All right, so I'm going to take out these pork chops. Okay, and then to this, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add my can of soup. Stir that up. All right, I'm going to add my cup of milk. Now I have made this in the past. In fact, I've done videos on it in the past where I've made my own white sauce. But when my mom used to make it, she did use the cans of soup to do hers. So, and it tastes good both ways. All right, now what I'm going to do is bring these to a bubble, to where they start to bubble. Which this one is almost there. See that nice sauce it's making? It's not a soup, it's a sauce. Or it might be cream soup, I guess. But see, to make it into a soup, the can says to add a cup of water. But we're using it as a sauce, so we added a cup of milk. All right, so I have the pork chops browned and I have the white sauce done. So let's go back over and put the casserole together. All right, so now we just have to assemble our casserole. And the way I like to do that is I like to start by spraying the pan with some Pam so that it doesn't stick. Makes cleanup easier later. And then I layer in the cabbage first. All right, and then I add the potatoes. I always try to make sure I have at least 8 big potatoes. All right, there you go. Cabbage, potatoes. All right, now what you're going to do is you're going to put on your sauce. And you're just going to pour this like a gravy or a sauce over everything. It's funny, when we were kids and we would get our helpings, we would always tell Mom, we want more goop. We want more of the goop. All right. And then on top of this, you're going to put the pork chops. Come on, go in there. And what this does is all of that nice fat, all of that nice fat's going to drip down onto your potatoes and your cabbage and your sauce, and it's going to give it even more flavor. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the lid on like so. I'm going to slide it into my 350-degree oven for probably 2 hours. Some of the smaller recipes that I've looked at that has like 4 pork chops say an hour to an hour and a half, but since this is a much larger meal, I'm going to go with probably 2 hours. I will check it at an hour, of course, but ooh. Okay. Now, after this gets finished cooking, I will be adding a small layer of butter and some Velveeta cheese, okay? But we'll do that later. Right now, I'm going to clean up the mess and we're going to make an apple pie. Okay, family and friends. So while the German casserole is in the oven cooking, I'm going to be making dessert. And this time of the year, dessert always involves apples. Apple pie, apple crisp, apple sauce, baked apples, anything apple. Apple butter. But today I'm going to be making apple pies, okay? And the apple pie recipe that I'm going to be using is in this Betty Crocker's cookbook that I got as a wedding present back in 1986, so 38 years ago. I've been using this cookbook for 38 years now. All right, and the apple pie recipes are divided into like 3 different recipes depending on how many apples you have, all right? So like there's the 9-inch that uses 6 cups of apples. There's the 10-inch that uses 8 cups of apples. There's the apple deep dish that uses 12 cups of apples. Now, normally, whenever I do apple pies, I use 8 cups. So whenever I freeze the apples, I put 8 cups into each gallon-sized bag, and then I know I have enough for a pie. But since this is the last bag that I did, I have 12 cups in here because I didn't want to start a half bag. So we're going to be making 2 9-inch pies because they need 6 cups of apples. So that way we'll get 2 pies. I can use up all the end apples here and go from there. So for 9-inch pies, and I'm just going to do 1 pie at a time. So for a 9-inch pie, we need 3/4 cup of sugar. All right. We need a 1/4 cup of flour. We need a 1/2 teaspoon. Is that right? Yeah, a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. All right, so here's the nutmeg. All of my things have rubbed off. Let's see, this is the teaspoon, so this is the 1/2, which I should know just by looking now. Okay, so a 1/2 teaspoon of the nutmeg. a half teaspoon of the cinnamon. All right. A dash of salt. So I'm just going, for measurement purposes, I'm going to use the 1/8 teaspoon for my dash. Okay. There we go. All right. And then 6 thinly sliced apples. 6 cups of thinly sliced apples. So let me measure out my apples here. This is a 4-cup measuring cup, so I need 1.5 of those. All right, so there's that. All right, there we go. Put these over here out of the way now. Okay. There we go. All right, I'm going to toss all of these ingredients together. Use up all of the dry ingredients with all of the apples. Okay, there we go. Okay, now I have to get the crust into the pie pan. And I just use frozen crust. I have made my own before, and it doesn't really taste any better than Pillsbury's. So I just go ahead and use Pillsbury. All right, so we're going to put this into the pan. I was asking John how to do this because, quite honestly, John's usually the one that does the apple pies, and his apple pies are always better than mine. And I'm not just saying that. So anyway, I couldn't remember if I had to prepare the pie pan any more than just putting the pie crust on. And he said, nope, you just put the crust right onto the pan. So there we go. He also said that since the apples are sweet, he only uses about half the sugar that it calls for because he figures the apples make up. But I'm following the recipe. Okay, that's how I know how to make apple pies. He's made them so many times that I think he knows it by heart. All right, so now we're going to put our apple mixture into this pie crust here. He also makes really good apple crisp. All right. But of course, with his foot, he can't make the pies and the crisp and everything right now, so I'm doing it. It'll still taste good. Anything apple tastes good. All right, so there is that part. All right, and then it calls for 2 tablespoons of butter to just be sliced on top of this. And this is a 4 tablespoon thing, so I'm going to only use half of this. All right, there we go. All right, so there's my 2 tablespoons of butter. And I cover. All right, and then I just take the other crust and lay it over the top. All right, so we're going to pinch these 2 together. I noticed John's pies have extra thick crust, and I think that's because you're pinching these two together. If you don't want that thicker crust, I guess you could cut that excess off. So I used to have this really pretty thing that you would put on top and press down. It would make an apple design for you to press the holes, but I can't find it. I may have given it to Karen. But you do need holes in the top to let it bubble through. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so now I'm going to put slices in this so that the steam can escape. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this butter here, this leftover butter, and I'm going to spread it on the top. It kind of adds some flavor to your crust, makes it golden. And then, but what it really does is it adds your cinnamon sugar mixture. I like to put a cinnamon sugar shake on the top, but Mr. Jackson, my grandson, he loves cinnamon sugar on toast. He likes cinnamon sugar on popcorn. He likes cinnamon sugar on his finger to just lick. So I'm going to have to make some more. All right, I'm going to take my cinnamon sugar mixture here and I'm going to sprinkle on top of the butter. Okay, so one pie down, one to go. All right, so let's just do this all over in super high speed here. All right, so then here is dessert waiting to go into the oven. Now, the thing is I have to wait for the German casserole to get finished first because it needs to cook at 350. And then as soon as it comes out, then I'll have to bump the pie temperature up to, where did it say? Okay, so then the pie temperature I have to bump up to 425. And then I'll put the two pies in to cook. And they have to bake for 40 to 50 minutes, which is about perfect because it'll take us about that long to eat and then let our stomach settle. And then we'll have some nice, fresh, hot apple pie for dessert. All right, so I'll be back. Okay, family and friends, well, the casserole has been in the oven at 350 for an hour and a half. So I'm now going to pull this out and give it a check, okay? Okay, the meat is definitely done because my fork went all the way through, no problem. Find a big fat potato here. Okay, and the potatoes are definitely done. All right, so this is definitely finished at an hour and a half, okay? So I'm going to go on to the next step because we have one more step to do before we serve it up. All right, so before we do the next step though, I need to take the pork chops off. So I'm going to take off the pork chops, put them in this pan. Quite make that one. That's okay. All right, and so at this point, this is where I would be dabbing on some butter and some cheese, slices of cheese. However, I didn't realize I was running so low on cheese. So in order to make this go further, because it wouldn't cover very much, I'm going to make a cheese sauce, okay? Normally, what I would be doing is I would be taking Velveeta cheese slices and just slicing and layering on top. But I didn't realize I was so low on Velveeta cheese, so I'm doing it this way instead. All right, there we go. Now, what I'm going to do with my cheese sauce here, so I'm just going to pour it over the potatoes first, so we can have cheesy potatoes. Except, I'm going to pour these over my potatoes. Do you guys want cheese on your potatoes, or you want? Okay. Yeah, really. All right, so I'm going to drizzle so that all of these potatoes have some cheese sauce on them. There we go. All right. Now, normally you would put this back into the oven for another 10 to 15 minutes to let your cheese melt. But my cheese is already melted, so I'm just going to put it in there for like another 5 minutes here, just enough to let everything melt down nice and good into each other. So this will not take very long at all. And I'm now at this point going to bump up my oven. I'm going to go ahead and bump up the oven to 425. All right. And then I'm pretty sure the casserole has been in there long enough because my cheese was already pre-melted. So we're going to go ahead and get it out. All right. And we're going to go ahead and slide the pies in, because they will not take very long for that to bump up to 425. So 1 pie, 2 pies. There's our dessert. It said between 40 and 50 minutes, so I'm going to set the timer for 40. I always start with the lowest number and work my way up. Okay, there we go. The timer is set for the pies. Here is a look at the yummy, yummy casserole. All right, so we're going to have German casserole for our lunch today. I'm going to enjoy this lunch with my sister and with John and just have a nice visit. So that's going to be it for this video. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you want to know more about what's going on in my corner of the world, hit that subscribe button to Kim's Country Corner. And I will talk to you all later. Bye for now. I will put a picture of the pie, of my slice of pie here at the end, so you can see what it looked like. All right, bye for now.